Blood poured down the dusty palace floor, mixing with the smell of burning palm oil from the courtyard fires. Amina's screams echoed to the cold stone hall, her voice shaking the walls. Her own brothers held her down, men she had shared food with, laughed with, and protected in childhood. One pressed a hand over her mouth. The other raised a sharp machete. This is for the good of the kingdom. The eldest whispered, his eyes cold. The blade came down. Her world went black. When Amina woke, the pain was a monster eating her alive. Her legs were gone. Only bandaged stumps remained. She stared at her brothers, who stood silently by the door. She wanted to ask why, but before she could speak, the chief priest entered with a staff carved with snakes. "It is done," he said. "The prophecy will not come to pass." But they were wrong, because what Amina would do next would make the whole kingdom tremble. Long before Amina's scream shook the palace, the kingdom of Dewari was known for its peace and beauty. It was a land where the river sang as it flowed, where the market smelled of roasted plantains, and the drums never stopped beating during the harvest festivals. Every year, the people gathered under the big Irako tree in the center of the village square. Elders would tell stories of bravery, and the young would dance until the moon was high. It was a place where neighbors treated each other like family, and the value of a person was measured by their kindness. In the heart of this kingdom stood the royal palace, a sprawling compound with red clay walls and golden rooftops. Here lived the king, his 3 sons, and his only daughter, Princess Amina. Amina was loved by the people not just because she was a king's daughter, but because of her spirit. She was brave, quick to laugh, and never turned away from someone in need. When farmers came to the palace with disputes over land, Amina often stepped in to calm tempers. She visited the sick with baskets of herbs, carried water for old women in the market, and listened to the songs of wandering storytellers with wide-eyed wonder. Her brothers, however, were different. While Amina found joy in the company of the common people, her brothers cared only for power. Musa, the eldest, was proud and easily angered. Idris, the second, was cunning and sharp-tongued. And the youngest, Karim, though quieter, often followed his older brothers in whatever they did. The king was old now. His hair was white like the moon, and though his mind was still sharp, everyone knew his time on the throne would not last forever. Among the people, whispers began to spread, whispers about who would rule after him. The tradition of Dewari was clear. The throne would go to the firstborn son. But the people often murmured that Amina had the heart of a ruler, not her brothers. Even the elders sometimes said, if only the laws allowed it, Amina would make a fine queen. It was during the festival of New Yams that everything began to change. The palace courtyard was full of music and dancing. The smell of grilled fish floated through the air. Amina wore a deep blue wrapper embroidered with gold, her hair adorned with cowrie shells. She moved from table to table, greeting visitors with warm smiles. As the sun dipped low, the chief priest, Baba Oro, stepped forward. He was a tall, thin man with eyes that seemed to see straight through your soul. His staff tapped the ground as he called for silence. Today, Baba Oro announced, the spirits have spoken prophecy. The drummers fell silent. Even the children stopped running and turned to listen. In the coming moon cycles, Baba Oro said, a ruler shall rise who will change the fate of this kingdom forever. They will bring either great glory or great ruin. This ruler will come from the royal blood, but will not be a king. The words hung in the air like smoke. The people murmured. All eyes turned, almost at once, toward Amina. Her brothers saw it too. The way the crowd looked at her, with a spark of hope. From that day on, the air in the palace grew heavy. Amina noticed her brothers watching her when they thought she wasn't looking. Conversation stopped when she entered the room. She told herself it was her imagination, but deep down, a small voice whispered that trouble was coming. One evening, as she sat by the river washing her hands after feeding the palace goats, she heard footsteps behind her. It was Musa. The people talk too much about you, he said, his tone sharp. Do not think their foolish dreams will change anything. You are a woman. The throne is not for you. Amina's heart pounded, but she kept her voice calm. I have never asked for the throne, Musa. All I want is what is best for our people. Musa gave her a long, cold look before turning away. That night, As she lay on her mat, Amina couldn't shake the feeling that the prophecy had placed a mark on her, a mark her brothers would not ignore. And she was right, because the next morning, the chief priest came to the palace with news that would set the first stone rolling toward disaster. The next morning, the palace drums beat faster than usual, calling everyone to the courtyard. Servants whispered nervously as they hurried to gather. The smell of incense filled the air, thick, heavy, almost choking. Amina stood beside her father, her wrapper tied neatly, though her mind was restless. The chief priest, Baba Oro, stood in the center, his snake-carved staff planted firmly in the ground. His eyes scanned the crowd before he spoke. "My king," Baba Oro began, bowing, "the spirits have spoken again. The prophecy is no longer far away. The time of change is near." The king's voice was calm but wary. "Tell us what you have seen, Baba Oro." The priest's gaze flicked briefly to Amina before he answered. "A ruler shall rise from your bloodline who is not a king. She will either bring Dewari into a golden age or destroy completely." The murmur from the crowd was like a restless wind. Amina's stomach tightened. Baba Oro continued, "But there is more. The spirits warn that her rise cannot be stopped by chains, poison, or the sword unless the source of her journey, the very legs that carried her, are taken from her." A sharp silence fell over the courtyard. The king's hand gripped his staff tightly. "And if this is done, then the prophecy dies," Baba Oro said simply. Amina's heart hammered in her chest. She could feel her brother's eyes on her, heavy as stones. She wanted to speak, to say this was nonsense, but fear sealed her lips. The king dismissed the gathering with a wave of his hand, but the damage was done. Whispers followed Amina everywhere she went. Some people avoided her eyes, as though looking at her might bring them into the prophecy's storm. Others, especially women and children, looked at her with quiet sympathy. That evening, as the sun sank, Amina overheard voices through the thin wall of her chamber. "The prophecy will not come to pass if we act quickly," Musa's voice said, low but hard. "It is our duty to protect the kingdom," Idris added. "Father is too soft when it comes to her. If we wait, it may be too late." Kareem's voice trembled slightly. "But she is our sister, and she is a threat," Musa snapped. Amina's breath caught. Her legs felt weak, but she moved quietly to her mat, pretending to be asleep when footsteps passed her door. For the next few days, she was careful. She stayed in busy places, avoided dark corners, and kept her distance from her brothers. But trouble is like smoke. Once it finds a way in, it fills the whole room. On the 5th night, she woke to rough hands grabbing her arms. A cloth covered her mouth before she could scream. She was dragged from her bed, her bare feet scraping against the cold stone floor. They took her to the old storehouse behind the palace. In the faint light of a single oil lamp, she saw their faces. Musa, Idris, Kareem. "Amina," Musa said, his voice flat. "This is for Dewari." Her muffled cries were swallowed by the darkness as Idris tied her hands. Kareem stood frozen in the corner, his eyes darting to the door as if wishing he could run. Then the machete glinted in Musa's hand. "No!" She tried to scream, but the cloth choked the sound. Her brothers moved closer, and in that moment, Amina knew her life would never be the same again. The night air was cold, but the terror running through Amina's veins burned hotter than fire. She thrashed against her brother's grip, but their hands were like iron. The machete in Musa's hand caught the flicker of the oil lamp. Idris knelt by her legs, his jaw set like stone. "This is for the good of the kingdom," Musa said again, as if saying it enough times would make it true. The blade came down. Amina's scream tore through the still night like the cry of a wounded animal. Pain exploded in her body, sharp and blinding. Her vision blurred, the ceiling above spinning before everything turned black. When she opened her eyes again, she was lying on a mat in a small, dark room. The smell of herbs filled her nose, and a soft rustling told her she was not alone. An old woman bent over her, gently dabbing her forehead with a wet cloth. "You're awake, child," the woman said in a voice as soft as morning rain. "Do not try to move yet." Amina looked down. Her legs were gone. Bandaged stumps were all that remained. Her breath came in short, sharp bursts as reality crashed down on her. She felt a scream rise in her throat, but it came out as a whisper. Why? The old woman's eyes were heavy with sadness. Your brothers brought you here, said they found you injured. But I heard enough from their whispers. I know the truth. They believe the prophecy can be stopped by taking your legs. Amina's chest tightened. She wanted to cry, to weep until her body was empty of tears, but the old woman's hand on hers kept her still. You must not lose your spirit, child, the woman said. They can take your legs, but they cannot take the fire in your heart. That is what the prophecy is truly about. The days that followed were long and painful. The old woman, Mama Ayabo, tended to her wounds, feeding her soup and massaging her arms to keep her strong. But as her body healed, so did her mind sharpen. She remembered every detail that night. The look in Musa's eyes, the way Idris avoided her gaze, the tremble in Kareem's hands. They thought they had ended her path, but they had only lit the fire of her journey. One evening, Mama Ayabo returned from the market with news. The kingdom is changing, Amina. Your brothers are whispering into the king's ear. They say you are too weak now to be of use. The people are being told you are resting far away, but they do not know the truth. Amina's eyes narrowed. Then I will tell them. Mama Ayabo frowned. You cannot walk. I do not need legs to make the kingdom tremble, Amina said, her voice steady for the first time since that night. That night, she asked Mama Ayabo to bring her a small drum, one that could be carried easily. I will tell my story, Amina whispered, and I will make sure every ear in Dewari hears it. But before her plan could take root, a shadow fell across Mama Ayabo's doorway the next morning. It was Kareem, and in his eyes, Amina saw both fear and a dangerous secret. Kareem stepped into Mama Ayabo's hut, like a man carrying a stone too heavy for his heart. He glanced at the old woman, then at Amina lying on the mat, her drum beside her. You shouldn't be here, Mama Ayabo warned, her eyes sharp. Your shadow alone could bring trouble. I know, Kareem said quietly, kneeling beside Amina, but I couldn't stay silent anymore. Amina's voice was cold. You watched them do it, Kareem. You stood there. His eyes dropped to the floor. I tried to stop them, but Musa, he threatened me, said if I spoke against them, I'd meet the same fate as you. Amina's heart twisted, not out of pity, but out of the painful truth that fear had made him weak. Why are you here now? Kareem took a deep breath, then leaned closer. They're not done, Amina. Baba Oro told Musa the prophecy might still come true, because your voice is more dangerous than your legs. They're planning to silence you forever. Mama Ayabo hissed under her breath. These sons of a king are worse than jackals. Kareem's hand shook as he pulled a small wrapped bundle from under his cloak. I brought this for you. Food, a little money, and news. The market women, the drummers, even the old fishermen, they speak of you. They don't believe the palace lies. They think something terrible has been done to you. Amina's eyes lit with a spark. Then the truth will spread faster than they can stop it. Kareem looked at her in confusion. You can't even leave this hut. That's what Musa believes, she said, her voice low but fierce. But my words can travel without me. Mama Ayabo smiled faintly. The talking drum. Yes, Amina nodded. Bring me messengers, children, traders, anyone who travels far. I will teach them a song, a riddle, a chant, the kind that slips into people's minds and refuses to leave. When they hear it, they'll know what was done to me, and they'll know who did it. Kareem hesitated. If they find out it came from you, they already tried to end me. Amina, cut in. Let them try again. I am no longer afraid. For the next few days, Kareem came at night, sneaking in young messengers from the market. Amina would beat the drum softly, singing her tale in the rhythm of ancient griots. She spoke of betrayal, of brothers who feared prophecy, and of a princess whose legs were stolen, but whose spirit walked taller than any king. The children learned quickly, their voices carrying her story from market stalls to fishing boats, from farmlands to the palace gates. But on the seventh night, as Amina finished teaching the last group, a deep voice came from outside the hut. "You have been busy, princess." It was Musa, and he was not alone. Musa ducked into Mama Ayabo's hut, his shadow swallowing the little light from the oil lamp. Behind him came Idris, tall and thin, his lips curved in that cruel half-smile Amina had learned to hate. 2 palace guards followed, their spears glinting in the dimness. Kareem froze where he stood, his eyes darting between his sister and his brothers. "So," Musa began, stepping closer, "the crippled princess thinks she can stir the kingdom against her own blood." Amina's hands rested calmly on her drum, though her heart pounded like a war beat. "I am only telling the truth, Musa. If that shakes the kingdom, then perhaps the kingdom is standing on lies." Idris' smile widened. "You think words and drumbeats will undo us? You forget, sister, we still have the king's ear. One word from us, and you will vanish from Dawari entirely." Mama Ayabo stepped forward, planting herself between them. "Not in my hut, you won't. This girl is under my care." Musa ignored her, his gaze fixed on Amina. "Do you even know why we did what we did?" Amina's voice was ice. "Because you feared losing the throne." Musa shook his head. "No, because the prophecy isn't what you think." The room went still. "The chief priest told us," Musa continued. "The prophecy says the one who will change the warrior forever will not be a king, and that their rule will come through blood spilled in the palace. Your blood, Amina. If you live long enough, you would bring war to this kingdom." Idris added, "We didn't cut your legs to take your place. We did it to stop the ruin you were destined to bring." Amina stared at them, her chest tight. "And you believed him?" Musa's jaw clenched. "I still do." But he glanced at Idris, then back at her. "The people are restless. Your song is spreading. If you do not stop, it will be war now, not later." "And if I refuse?" she asked. "Then," Idris said softly, "you will not see another sunrise." The guard stepped forward, but before they could reach her, Kareem moved. He stood in front of Amina, his hands raised. "Enough. We've done enough to her. If there's war coming, it won't be because of her. It will be because of us." Musa's eyes darkened. "You've chosen your side, then." "I have," Kareem said, his voice trembling but steady. Musa gave a cold nod to the guards. "We leave. But hear me, Amina. If one more word of your song reaches my ears, I will make sure there's nothing left of you to bury." They left, their footsteps heavy on the dirt. Silence filled the hut, broken only by the faint hiss of the oil lamp. Kareem turned to Amina. "We have to be faster now. Whatever the truth is about that prophecy, they'll kill you before you can prove them wrong." Amina's fingers tightened around her drum. "Then we don't just spread my story, we make the people act." Mama Ayabo gave her a wary look. "And how do you plan to do that?" Amina's eyes gleamed in the dim light. "By making the whole kingdom believe the prophecy is already coming true, whether my brothers like it or not." The days that followed were a storm brewing in silence. Amina's drum never left her side. With Kareem's help, she sent out not just messengers but performers, storytellers, singers, and dancers who could disguise her words and riddles, so that by the time they reached the ears of common folk, they sounded like prophecy itself. At the market, a woman selling yams would hum a tune. The river flows without legs, yet it reaches the sea. The throne fears the one who crawls, for she walks in dreams. By the riverside, fishermen repeated tales of a legless spirit who would rise to cleanse the warrior of injustice. Children played games chanting her story, thinking it was just a rhyme. But the people understood. They always did. The streets began to buzz with a strange energy. At first, it was murmurs in dark corners, then bold conversations in the open. Some said the prophecy was already unfolding. Others claimed they had seen signs. An eagle circling the palace 3 times, the river flooding only the royal farmlands. Amina knew this was dangerous. When the people believed in a change, they stopped fearing the rulers who chained them. But she also knew this. Once a drumbeat starts, it's hard to silence. One night, Kareem returned to Mama Ayabo's hut pale and breathless. "They're coming for you, Amina, tonight." Mama Ayabo's hands froze over the herbs. She was grinding. Who? All of them, Kareem said. Musa Idris, the guards, and Baba Oro. They're saying you are a witch who's cursing the land. They want to burn you alive in the square before the next sunrise. Amina's stomach turned, but her voice was steady. Then tonight is the night we finish this. Kareem stared at her as though she had lost her mind. Finish this? You can't even walk. I don't need to, she said. I just need to be seen. And so, as the moon rose high, Kareem carried Amina in his arms through the narrow back paths of Dewari, with Mama Aya both following close behind. They headed not away from danger, but toward it, the great Irako tree in the village square, where the people gathered for every feast and judgment. By the time they arrived, a crowd had already formed, holding torches. Musa and Idris stood at the front, Baba Oro at their side, his staff glinting in the firelight. There! Musa shouted, pointing at Amina, the witch who had destroyed Dewari. But before anyone could seize her, Kareem lifted her high for all to see, and from her lap came the deep, defiant beat of her drum. The crowd went silent. People of Dewari. Amina's voice rang out, stronger than it had any right to be. They fear me because I tell the truth. They cut my legs, but still I rise. They call me a witch, but I am your daughter. And if the prophecy says I will change this kingdom, then I will, starting now. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A few torches lowered. But Baba Oro raised a staff, his voice thundering. Do not be deceived. She will bring blood to this land if she lives. Amina locked eyes with him. Then let the people decide whether the blood will be mine or theirs. The square erupted in shouts, some for her, some against her. Spears rose. Stones were picked up. The night was one breath away from turning into war. And then, a single arrow flew from the shadows. It struck someone in the chest. And when the body fell, the flames from the torches revealed a face that made the whole crowd scream. The body hit the ground with a dull thud. Gasps tore through the crowd, and the air turned heavy with fear. It was Baba Oro. The chief priest lay on his back, his staff rolling from his lifeless hand. His eyes were wide open, staring at nothing. The arrow had pierced straight through his chest. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the crowd erupted into chaos. Some screamed in terror. Others shouted accusations. The guards scrambled to form a barrier around Musa and Idris, their faces pale. Kareem set Amina down at the base of the Irako tree. Stay here, he whispered, but Amina grabbed his wrist. No, she said, her voice low but sharp. This is the moment. We either take the kingdom tonight or lose it forever. She struck her drum once. Boom. The sound cut through the noise like a spear. The crowd stilled, their eyes turning to her. People of Dewari, she called out. The spirits have spoken, not through a priest's tongue, but through the truth before your eyes. They feared me because they knew my voice would reveal their lies. And now their mouthpiece is gone. Some in the crowd began to nod. A few even shouted her name. Musa stepped forward, fury burning in his eyes. Do not listen to her. She killed Baba Oro. She's bewitched you all. Then show them the arrow. Amina said, it came from the shadows where your own guard stood. The crowd turned, eyes narrowing at the men with spears. One of the younger guards stepped back, sweat beading on his forehead. I saw it, an old market woman shouted. It was Idris' man who shot the arrow. Idris' face twisted. She lies. But the crowd was no longer sure. The whisper of rebellion grew louder. Amina's voice rose above it. They took my legs to silence a prophecy, but still it speaks. The prophecy was never about bringing ruin. It was about bringing justice. And justice begins tonight. The people surged forward, their voices joining hers in a chant that spread like wildfire. Justice, justice, justice. Moose's jaw tightened. He motioned to the guards. Seize her. But as they stepped forward, Kareem drew a blade from under his cloak and stood in front of Amina. You'll have to kill me first. The people closed in around them, forming a human wall between Amina and the guards. Moose's face turned from anger to something colder, calculation. He knew this fight could not be won here. This is not over. Amina, he spat. The throne will be mine, and when it is, you will beg for death. He and Idris backed away, disappearing into the darkness with their loyal men. The square was alive with firelight and shouts. For the first time, Amina felt the power of the people fully behind her, but she also knew Musa would not run forever. He would gather his strength, and when he returned, it would be for war. She looked at Kareem and Mama Ayabo. We have one night to prepare. Tomorrow we finish this. The crowd roared in agreement. But deep in Amina's heart, she knew, before the sun set the next day, someone in the royal family would not live to see another dawn. The first light of dawn spilled across the warrior like molten gold, but the air was thick with tension. All through the night, the people had gathered around the Irako tree, sharpening spears, carving clubs, and weaving plans. Messengers ran between the huts, carrying news and rallying more supporters. Mama Ayabo prepared healing herbs in case blood was spilled. Kareem sharpened his blade in silence, his jaw tight. Amina sat at the base of the tree, her drum in her lap, her eyes closed. She was listening, not to the noise of the crowd, but to the heartbeat of the kingdom. By mid-morning, the sound of marching feet broke the stillness. Musa and Idris approached from the palace, their men dressed in armor, shields glinting in the sun. They came not as brothers, but as enemies. Musa's voice boomed across the square. People of Dawari, step aside now, and no harm will come to you. This crippled woman has poisoned your minds with lies. The people did not move. Instead, they parted slightly to let Amina be seen. She beat her drum once. Boom. The sound rolled like thunder. I am no queen, she called out. I am your daughter, your sister, your blood. And the truth is simple. They rule for themselves, not for you. If you want that to end, then stand with me now. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Spears rose. The chant from the night before returned, louder than ever. Justice, justice, justice. Musa's face hardened. So be it. He raised his hand, and his men surged forward. The square exploded into chaos. Spears clashed against shields, men shouted, and women hurled stones from the rooftops. Kareem fought like a man possessed, guarding Amina's side, while Mama Ayabo pulled the wounded to safety. Through the din, Idris charged straight for Amina, his blade raised. Kareem blocked him, but Idris knocked him aside with a vicious kick. Idris swung down at Amina, only for her to raise her drum in both hands. The blade struck it with a loud crack, but the wood held long enough for Kareem to recover and drive his dagger into Idris' side. Idris fell, gasping, the life draining from his eyes. Musa roared in rage, cutting down anyone in his path to reach them. He raised his sword high, ready to strike Amina down where she sat. But before he could, Kareem seized his arm. The two brothers struggled, teeth bared, until Musa slammed Kareem to the ground. He turned back to Amina and found her holding Idris' fallen spear. With all the strength left in her arms, she drove it into the air between them, the blade tip-pressing against his chest. The people swarmed forward, pulling Musa away, disarming him. End him, someone shouted. But Amina raised her hand. The square fell silent. No, she said. Let him live with the truth that the people of Dawari will never again be ruled by fear. Musa's eyes burned with hatred, but his power was gone. The people dragged him away toward exile. When the dust settled, Kareem knelt beside Amina, his hand trembling on her shoulder. It's over. She shook her head. No, Kareem, it has only begun. Dawari will have a council of its people, not a throne of one. And I will serve, not as ruler, but as voice. The crowd erupted in cheers. And so it was that the princess with no legs became the heart of a new Dawari. Her drumbeat was a sound of justice, echoing to the land for generations.